What a day, what a match, what a game. It's been fantastic. You're welcome back to the Final Whistle Women's National League podcast. But today, we can't really talk about the Women's National League, for a little while at least. We will later on with Collie O'Neill, the newest appointment in the Women's National League. But first, for me, Breifne Earley and Aaron Clarke, who joins us all the way from Glasgow. Aaron, talk to us about last night briefly. We were going to talk about it in more detail with Diarmuid in a minute, but your first instincts at the final whistle last night.
The emotions were running high. Obviously, considering you look at what's been done in the group so far, some of the results we've had. I think there was some magic night, and then when you see that happen, it's a bit surreal. Thought would it ever happen? Getting to the playoffs. Your initial thoughts were Australia, New Zealand, and going there in February. Then all of a sudden, the games they're playing out throughout the day, and you're thinking, okay, if we win in 120 minutes, we could be directly through to a World Cup. And when it was made for Amber Barrett to score, considering what's happened in the last week in Donegal, we send our condolences to the families, but for a Donegal lady to come on and score the winner to send Ireland to a World Cup, we couldn't have written it. It was a magic night. Absolutely.
Well, in case anyone's been living under a rock for the last 24 hours or so, here's exactly what we're talking about. Here's our reporter, Diarmuid Kearney's thoughts in Hampden Park immediately after the final whistle.
What a game of football we have just witnessed here at Hampden Park. Ireland are in the World Cup. They have qualified, having beat the Scots 1-0 in Hampden Park this evening. The players are behind me as I speak, celebrating. Shortly after the full-time whistle blew, they all ran onto the field, emotion overflowing. The game had everything. In the first half, we had a penalty in the opening quarter. Courtney Brosnan, Aaron Clarke is behind me. Even Aaron, this game had everything. But that save from Courtney Brosnan really sparked the light for Ireland's hopes of getting through in this contest. And then later on in the half, Anya Gorman had a chance. Megan Campbell had the ball in the net from a throw-in. And then there was table tennis in the box in added time. And it was Sophie Brown and Gibson in the Scotland net that cleared it into the second half. Heather Payne went down injured. Amber Barrett came on as a second half substitute. Denise O'Sullivan played an inch-perfect pass on the far side of the field. Amber Barrett raced through and put in the back of the net. It's been a tough and difficult week for the people of Donegal, but Amber Barrett had an outstanding performance when she came off the bench, and she even kissed the armband this evening to remember all of those who lost their lives in Donegal over the last couple of days. But it is a remarkable achievement for Ireland, and I'm getting a lump in my throat now just thinking that they've actually made the World Cup, having been so good in this qualification. It finishes at Hampden Park this evening. The Republic of Ireland 1, Scotland 0.
What a report, and I suppose we better hear from the man himself. We'll bring him into the conversation. Both of you, I'm not jealous at all, I swear, but both of you were in the ground last night. Diarmuid, we might start with you. We've already heard Aaron's thoughts. Your thoughts after that game, I suppose after that, watching that back, your actual thoughts at the time.
Oh, unbelievable. Like, it was just, those final 6 minutes were probably one of the most stressful 6 minutes I've ever had watching a game in my life, because it was relentless pressure from Scotland. It was going into the area. You were just screaming for them to clear it, just get it out anywhere. And they did it really well. And I remember when the penalty happened early, I turned to Aaron and I had said, don't let that be the deciding factor in this game. A penalty in the opening 15 odd minutes and we're chasing our tail now for the rest of it. But no, credit to them. They had so many chances, and even seeing everything after the final whistle blew at Hampden last night, it was just a phenomenal achievement for them. Definitely something that they've deserved. The qualification campaign was outstanding by them, and it felt a bit surreal. I don't even think the players realised. I know Amber had said that it was probably the longest 20 minutes of her life, but then she didn't realise that it was the goal that seen us into the World Cup. Before the game, we were on our phones keeping an eye on the Portugal game, and when that result had come through in our favour, it was like, right, get the job done.
Yeah, it really, really
and
was an opportunity that
and
Ireland.
they did, and we look,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
going to
like
be an
it
opportunity
was
that Ireland we're
phenomenal.
never going to see again in terms of opportunities to get the World Cup. When we saw both sides falter in Iceland and in the other game as well, Switzerland at times both behind in those games. So it gave that little bit of belief and that bit of hope. I suppose, Aaron, you've been watching these players over the last number of years. You've seen them progress from maybe budding Women's National League players into professionals in different places. Who impressed you last night? Who actually stood up and said, "Yeah, I am good enough to be at a World Cup"?
The one player in particular, Denise O'Sullivan, was absolutely unbelievable. She's been brilliant in a lot of games this campaign. And I thought last night again, she delivered the pass she played for the goal was something else. Then you look at other players. I thought Lily Eye, considering she's only coming up for the last couple of games, it was very good as well. Katie as well led from the front. But I thought as a team performance, it was very good. Yes, there was a couple of times where a couple of sloppy errors were nearly caught in the hot four, but I just thought as overall it was a massive team performance, and as Dermot said in his report, like Courtney Brosnan pulling out the penalty save, she went way too early. She took the guess, she took the gamble, and it paid off. And I thought she was brilliant under the high ball for the rest of the game. Typical goalkeeper towards the end though, knew exactly what she had to do to run the clock down. There was a stage where one of the Scottish staff threw a ball on, and Courtney was like, "Nah, I'm not going for that." She literally walked behind the goal and got the other one. And I think the referee said it's great. Didn't say anything because of the fact that it wasn't thrown on by the fourth official, but it was just the experience of knowing how to close out the games, which is important. 5 clean sheets on the bounce, stemming back to what the Philippines game in Turkey before they went to Georgia. Like, didn't concede many goals in this campaign. I think that's the biggest thing from an Irish point of view. Someone we had on the show recently, Louise Quinn, made a 99th cap for Ireland. People like that, if it hadn't been successful, would we have seen them again? Would she have got to 100? Now you've got the likes of herself. We could see Denise O'Sullivan reach 100 cap in and around the World Cup period, but obviously the pre-match friendlies that will take place. And I thought it was just a great team performance. They worked so hard for each other, and they were just relentless. And even in the build-up, there was no real. The talk of the injuries was mentioned, and it was sort of brushed aside as if the players we have here, this is who we have, this is who's available. And I thought the way they handled themselves last night was brilliant, and to see the celebration and then to see the videos of them when they landed back in Dublin Airport as well, it was amazing, and it was just one of them things that I hate to say it from your point of view, Breifne, but I'd have been absolutely devastated if I hadn't been here last night.
Yeah, I do take some solace in the fact that I've been in touch with one or two of them overnight that I would have crossed paths with over the years, and they're all, I suppose, just delighted with getting through, and it's going to be a big 8 months ahead. There's 9 months ahead between now and the games actually taking place. The draw, of course, later this month. But in terms of the actual atmosphere last night, many Irish at it. I would have expected a fairly big crowd.
There was a decent Irish crowd there, and I think there was pockets to our left and pockets to our right. Not all sitting together fully at times. Interesting enough, though, the record crowd was actually last Thursday, Scotland, and the attendance was lower tonight than it was against Austria. I think maybe Celtic against RB Leipzig had a bit of a knock-on effect on it, as much as they would have hoped it wouldn't, because obviously you'd see the Irish coming over. But when on my flight over, there was quite a few Irish, and then I was even talking to people when you're saying Irish were coming from Edinburgh. I think we were talking to someone coming out of the ground last night. They come from Newcastle. They got flew to Newcastle and then come up that way by the train. So fans made every way they could, and at times you could even hear them screaming on the girls' green. And I think for the fans who did make it, it wasn't a cheap trip, and there'll be a couple of tears shed last night for sure.
Jim, in terms of the atmosphere in the ground, what was the reaction when early on in the game ref gives a penalty against? But to be fair, we can wear our tribal Irish hats, but it did hit Fahy's hand. The ref was given the opportunity to give the penalty. She chose to. But before the save, what was the mood like? Was it a bit of foreboding, or was it one that, oh no, we got this? Because to be honest, looking from the screen here in Ireland, the Scottish player did not look confident at all stepping up to take that penalty.
Yeah, I suppose in the opening couple of minutes, Ireland were definitely in control. They were the dominant team early on, but didn't have those clear-cut chances that we would have liked to maybe get an early goal and then sit on the lead for a while. Once, I suppose, from our angle, we just saw that the effort had came off the bar, and all the supporters around us had got up to their feet and were, very emotional, thinking, that we came so close there, and we were like, oh, that's a major let off. And then referee points to the spot, and we're just thinking, oh, jeez, no, not again, not another penalty. It's not going to go our way. And the Scots were getting into it. They were getting hostile toward it. They were really trying to root their team on. And Caroline Weir stepped up, and as Aaron just said there, Courtney guessed early, and she went down and she saved well. And from there, I suppose it was a bit of a topsy-turvy half in terms of both teams had chances. We came close. Megan Campbell, as I said in the video report, had the ball in the net from a throw, and we thought it had gotten a little bit of a touch on the way in off a Scottish defender, but unfortunately it didn't. It got into the net. Towards the end of the game, the Scottish fans did start to boo Ireland for a lot of time wasting. As Aaron said, Courtney Brosnan was going down, taking her time to take a kick out and everything like that. And Irish players had gone down with injuries, and they weren't really happy with it. So I thought at that stage, when the home crowd were getting really emotional into it, that it's like, okay, Ireland might have this. And at the angle that we had for Amber Barrett's goal, it just trickled in to the net, and you're thinking, go in, just don't hit the post. It was almost like we were watching it in slow motion going into the back of the net. And from there, it was absolutely outstanding.
But just on that referee, I was looking around a little bit with about 85th minute, 86th minute, and you could see some Scottish fans were actually starting to leave as well. Probably a bit frustrated and disbelief. Everybody talked, even in the pre-match press conference, they talked about the odds. Ireland were 9-2, Scotland were money on favourites, and then Vera was having none of it. She didn't really take any heed of it, and I don't think we took heed of it either in terms of players and stuff like that, because it was just that they knew they had a job to do, and that was it. And I think the biggest credit you got to give them is that they soaked up the pressure later on. They didn't relent even when the crowd are on their back. The crowd are hostile. They're trying to intimidate and trying to get any decision they can. And I thought the referee, she let some things go, but she was doing it on both sides. So it's not as if she wasn't doing it on one or the other. And I thought that was the biggest thing from an Irish point of view. They just kept composed on. They kept it until the very last minute. And, we're now looking at the draw. We're going to be in pot 3 for the draw. So there's no doubt we could easily get two very difficult teams. We could get Brazil and the USA, or I think it was Denmark and somebody else they were saying, and it could either be a very hard draw, it could be a very easy draw, but we've never been there before. That's the biggest thing, and that's the most exciting thing. I know we're going to have conversations over the next couple of weeks. What's going to happen with the home-based players? What are they going to do? We've seen with the North last year, where the home-based players all went in to be professionals for 6 months. Are the FAI going to do something like that? Sport Ireland going to give money towards that? It's interesting times. The National League probably won't see much of a kick up off it until probably the World Cup rolls around. I don't think it'll happen. It won't happen this season anyway. But it's exciting times. There's so many opportunities going to be available now, and I think if the next group of who are in the stadium who want to be inspired, you can't not be inspired by what happened last night.
Well, I actually disagree with you on that. I think the Women's National League could get a huge boost. Look where we are. We're 3 games left to play and 4 teams in the title hunt. Some really big games, TV coverage. You've got personalities, maybe not necessarily players. Anya Gorman, of course, played last night, but you've other personalities from around the game. Karen Duggan, Stephanie Roach, both involved in the commentary and the analysis last night on TV. They're going to be at grounds. And I think to young girls coming in, I think it's a perfect opportunity for the FAI to go, do you know what, we're really going to push the last 3 weeks of this. They already are, but to really double down on that and put some serious money behind promoting what is a phenomenal product. And let's not
ask you a question. I want to ask you a question on that. Do you think last night's result now they may reconsider the idea of having the Premier Division final night the same day as the Cup final?
No, I think the FAI are too stuck in the ways to change that. That's not going to happen. But for me, the one thing of note last night, when you look back through all of those players on the pitch last night and in the stand for Ireland, the vast majority of them have played in the Women's National League at some point. Even more so than the men. And we've talked about the men's League of Ireland connections over the years. There were 7 or 8 in the last European Championship squad in 2016. But the Irish team last night, of the 18 or 20 girls involved on the match day squad, I would imagine at least 14 or 15 of them have played in the Women's National League, which is huge. And this is, okay, it mightn't be the finished product like the WSL is, but it's definitely part of that pathway to a green jersey. And I think the FAI need to get behind that. Last night, one of the biggest weapons we had, though, we stick to the football for a little while, well before we're going on a rant about the politics of it. Megan Campbell's long throws. We've seen them since the 2010 Under-17 World Cup and European Championship run. We've known this about her for a long, long time. As well as a phenomenal player, she has this in her arsenal. How much did that just throw havoc into the Scottish defence at times?
Me and Dan were chatting about it, like, massively. You could see every time, even when they got crosses into the box, the Scottish defence are sort of at 6s and 7s at times, and I think that's something that Ireland identified. You could see like the likes of O'Gorman making a burst into the back post if Katie McKay was getting the ball in, but the long throw-ins, like even the player standing right in front of Megan didn't care. Megan was like, that's fine, I'll just throw it over your head, and like the trajectory is something else, and that's the biggest thing. Like, she gets the pace and speed on it, and I think it definitely caused so much havoc there. And like, you only have to look back at the likes of the Germany game in previous campaigns where Ireland scored late from a Steph Roach from a throw-in like that. They've had success over the past, and it could become a very important weapon in the next 8-9 months.
I'm not going to throw a downer on proceedings, but the one thing that irked me a little bit yesterday, and I haven't been a fan of Vera Pauw. I think she's going to fall into the Jack Charlton mode here of just being a hero across the country when we get to 8 or 9 months' time when we're lining out with the World Cup. She's going to go down the folklore, but I just haven't been a fan of maybe some of the things that she's done along the way and how she's handled certain situations. But last night, in the immediate aftermath, she talked about how it wasn't because we had the best players we won, but because we had the best game plan. Is that a little bit insulting to the girls on the field?
I don't know, Graham, I'll let you take this, and then I'll give you an opinion.
Aaron's avoiding the controversy. I like it. Jimmy, your thoughts?
I suppose it is a little like, I thought that the players that played last night showed courage and leadership when they needed to. The defense was solid. Courtney was solid in net, and the midfield. Everyone did what they had to do. Everyone knew exactly what they needed to do. When Heather got injured and came off, Amber knew, right, I need to come on and play up front. I'm now the person that's going to need to get the goals. The lads know what they need to do as well. So I thought everyone played well. You do have your game plan as well. You do have your tactics and the master plan that works with it. But I think it was just down to the way that they showed what they could do last night. And definitely, we have a squad for the future, and there's younger players that are waiting to get a cut into this team as well. And if they can play like we know that they can play, there's definitely a future for the sport in this country if we can get the right stuff going for it, to be honest.
No disrespect to the players who are injured, but the only one really you could say is probably Megan Connolly is probably a nailed on starter. Lucy Littlejohn, majority of the time would potentially start. But other than that, the likes of Jess Sue, Leanne Kiernan, they're not always guaranteed starters. So, like, there's players who've come in there who've done their job, and I think to make them comments, it's not great. It's, you think, just praise your players and say they left everything on the pitch. They gave it their all. They worked so hard. They got the result because they fought so hard and they never gave up. But to say it was tactically more than that we didn't have the better players is a bit of a kick in the teeth to some of the players. It's probably maybe you can say sometimes she says stuff where you're thinking is because language stuff, but it's a strange comment to make off the back of such an achievement.
Yeah, we'll give her the benefit of the doubt in terms of the translation, but it didn't sit right with me in the moment in the game, in the aftermath of the game yesterday in Hampden. In terms of, I suppose, where we go to from here, obviously we have that period now. We don't have to go to New Zealand in March. We can relax and kind of plan and prepare. We don't have that uncertainty about whether we're going to be going or not going, regardless of whether we would have been the top seeds in that qualification process or not. There still was that element of lottery to it. Now we've got 8 to 9 months to plan. First of all, I suppose, any players coming up that we might see back in the equation? Will Ellen Malloy be back in time for selection, or will it be a little bit too soon for her? Are there other youngsters coming through? Could we see an Emma Doherty break in with another maybe half a season in the Women's National League, with Sligo ahead of her? Like, are there players now under 19? Jessie Stapleton's another one who wasn't in the squad last night but has impressed previously on under 19 level. Are there players on the fringes that we could see breaking into this squad in the next 9 months?
Breifne, the biggest thing is you have to realise is she can only bring 23. She's had 27 here. She's had 27 of her games. Plus, so it's a case of, if you're going to break in and you haven't been involved, you're going to have to do something that's electric for 6 months to get her attention. I think when you're talking about the likes of Jessie Staples, it's like Jessie's been good for Shelbourne. She went and captained the 19s instead. But like, when you've only got such a short number of players you can bring, she won't bring 4 goalkeepers, that's for sure. She'll only go back to 3. Like, it's a tough one. And how do you pick a fine balance? Because we see a lot of our squads when she names big squads, it tend to be a lot of defenders, a lot of midfielders, maybe attacking line for this campaign, for this game in particular was probably one of the weaker ones because of what was available. So it's tough to see how she picks the squad. There's definitely going to be players who've been in and around the squad right now who are going to be disappointed. There's no doubt about it. But like, picking that final 23 is probably going to be one of the hardest things. Someone breaking in, they'll have to be unbelievable and be brilliant to have any hope, I think.
Is there anyone in the frame for that, though?
And as you said, Emma Doherty, Emily Corbett's, they're sort of having to if they have this start the next season. But I think a lot of it will depend on injuries. Like, Leanne Kiernan should be back hopefully by February. The question is, the likes of Jess Sue, will Jess get back for the World Cup? It's probably going to be a touch and go considering what she's got. Maybe Savannah McCarthy could be back in time. She played a pivotal part until she done her ACL, so she's somebody who could come back in. It's hard to know at this stage. I think I'm sure they'll line up a couple of friendlies next year. That's where we'll sort of get a telling of what way she's going to do things. Will she go with a slightly smaller squad than them to give us an indication? The thing is, she's always had that core group of 16, 17, so you'd expect a lot of them to still be nailed on to go to the World Cup, and then there's just a couple of spots that are just up for grabs.
Yeah, in terms of the World Cup, though, of course, next summer, July and August, I think is the dates for June, July. Anyway, it's going to be hot. It's going to be actually it's going to be winter in Australia, so it's not going to be hot. It's going to be relatively cold, but still, by Irish standards, warm enough, even in an Australian winter. In terms of that kind of effect of building a team and going into it, looking at the teams we're going to face. We've watched a lot of the qualification process, and we've been probably the underdogs going to a lot of games again in qualification, and now we find ourselves in a situation where we're playing even better teams. You mentioned Brazil, you mentioned Australia, you've plenty of European sides in there as well. You mentioned Brazil and America, I should say, but Australia, New Zealand as well. They're all possible hosts in number 1 seeds in the group. We probably will face someone of that caliber. What are our realistic chances here? We've seen Irish teams go to these championships in the past and really not come away well out of it. Can we get results? Can we get to the last 16? Can we get out of the group?
See, you have to. The thing is, there'll be some third place teams that will get out of groups. So it all depends. It all depends on the draw. If you get 2 stinker first and second seeds, it could come down to a goal difference against the 4th seed. Let's see if you get out. Like, if you get a draw, that's a bit more favourable. There's a chance they could get to the last 16. It's tough to say where we think we can go because we haven't seen what the draws is going to take place. But I think it's one that we'll probably analyse it a little bit more. I'd say it's fair to say once we do have the draw, we know if we're going to New Zealand, are we going to Australia? That's when you'll sort of be able to plan things a little bit better. And I assume, like, even you'll probably agree with that. It's hard to put somewhere to say we're going to get somewhere now at the moment, just at this stage.
Yeah, German just having some connection issues there. He's obviously in Glasgow as well. He'll be back to us in just a couple of moments. I was going to ask German just before he dropped out there about in terms of the expectations. are there any particular favourites? Would you rather be in Australia, rather be in New Zealand? I suppose, Aaron, if you want to take that.
I just want to go and hope my boss gives me the time off to go. That's all. I couldn't care where it's New Zealand, Australia, one way or another. Once I can get there, that's all I care about is making that trip.
I did have a sneaky little look at some of the pools, and I kind of have my favourite draw already. I want to be A2. I want to be opening the tournament against New Zealand in Eden Park because it would be a nice little compact. A2 or C3 will be the dream draw, I think, in terms of where you'll end up, because you'll be in New Zealand and you'll be with it fairly compact. Auckland to New Zealand, or Auckland to Hamilton, not a million miles apart for the 3 games.
But that's where the playoff is in Auckland and Hamilton next February, the continental playoff. So, like, yeah, if you could get that, it'd be nice to get back. The worst thing you don't want is the traveling. If you have to do a lot of traveling, hopping around places, it'd be a bit more awkward.
Yeah, and despite the fantastic Irish reception you'd get in Perth, the distance to anywhere else is absolutely horrific. I know all about it from a former life, but it's going to be interesting a few months ahead. Prediction, boys, if you had to put your house on it now, Jim, I'll start with you since you just dropped back in again. Ireland next year, where are we going to finish? Are we looking at a group stage elimination, last 16? Is a quarter-final out of the question?
I think it's hard to call in terms of where we can do. I suppose if you look at it's their first time ever qualifying for a major tournament, so it'll be tough to predict where they could finish. I think if they can make a good showing in the group stage, that'll be a positive result for them, something that they can take into a future campaign and everything like that. I mean, for what we see last night, Amber had said, if Vera wants to win the World Cup, she better put her on the plane going over to Australia or New Zealand, and we do have the confidence, as you said. Ireland are probably the ultimate underdog in terms of when we do take on some of the bigger teams. We've seen the performances that the women's team have put up against teams that are seeded higher than them. I know I think we're the lowest ranked seed coming out of the European qualifiers, but that won't phase Ireland and anything like that. I think we live off being the underdog story, and if we can have some of those scenes that we had for the men's World Cup a couple of years ago, if Ireland win a couple of games in the group stage and go into the last 16 or even a quarter final, that's more than what you would want. And I just hope that we can get those performances, to be honest.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Diarmuid, thanks so much for joining us. It's been a phenomenal 24 hours for Irish women's football. Of course, we've been bringing it up for years. It's great to see the rest of the country catching on to what we know is a fabulous product. I'm glad you both enjoyed Glasgow. I'm never speaking to either of you again. I'm just jealous, but we'll get over that. Gents, thanks very much for joining us. Diarmuid, thank you.
No worries.
And that was the lads there chatting to me earlier today about all things World Cup qualification. Fantastic night for women's football in the country, and a really, really, really positive step forward, massive step forward for the girls in green last night. So congratulations to Vera and the squad. I've managed to speak to one or two of them over the last few days, and they're absolutely walking on air. Despite everything that's been in the news today, I think it's still remains to be seen how fantastic an achievement that was over the last 24 hours or so. Now, to other exciting news across the league in the last week or so. 6 times FAI Women's Cup champions Shamrock Rovers have announced their intention to return to the Women's National League after a brief sojourn. Of course, they were there at the start of the league, played a couple of seasons, but we're expecting something all singing, all dancing, and of a very different nature entirely when they take to Tallaght Stadium for the start of next year's competition. Of course, license dependent on that application over the next few months. But joining me now to have a chat about everything that might entail is the newly appointed manager of that Women's National League side, Collie O'Neill. Collie, you're very, very welcome to the programme.
Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm
Long time no speak.
It has been too many years, Collie, since we soldiered together in a former League of Ireland outpost called Dublin City. You've been kind of busy since then, though. Let's maybe, before we get into the Women's National League stuff, let's maybe introduce you to you're well known to all League of Ireland fans, of course, but to anybody who maybe just ensconced in the women's game and that they're not as familiar with your CV as anything else. Probably the time spent at UCD is probably the most high-profile period of your managerial career, but you've been in a number of really good profile jobs and delivered a lot of success to the teams you've been at.
Yeah, I suppose Dublin City was the first one. That was 2005, was it?
It was earlier, I think. It was earlier.
It was in 2005, and we were obviously first season. We actually relegated Shamrock Rovers in the first season. A former player at UCD, Conor Kieran, still gives out to me about that one because he's a big Rovers fan. But yeah, started off at Dublin City, and then was it 2006, halfway through the year, that went belly up. I then went to Dundalk. Again, got into a playoff with Dundalk, working with John Gill. That was the year where we won the playoff but never got promoted down in Waterford because they went and reorganised the league due to different financial and ground structures. Then 2007, I think it was, Dermot Keeley came back for me and I went to Shelbourne as his assistant manager, where we had the fantastic job of trying to put a team together in 10 days. Which was interesting, trying to come because they were relegated obviously for financial mismanagement the previous year. So signing people in cars and hotels and bars and trying to have a pre-season done as well, all in 10 days. So good memories. So I was there from 2007, 2008, 9. I think it was halfway through 2010. Dermot quit, and I ended up being caretaker manager there for 10. I think it was it 8 games I got. It was 3 months. I was there as a caretaker manager, and that was the end of my time in Shelbourne. And then moved on to UCD. I was there for 9 years up until 2019.
Of course, since then you've been involved in Cabinteely and Bray, and now a brand new venture for yourself with Shamrock Rovers, having relegated them 16 years ago. Now you're back to try and raise women's football from the ashes in Tallaght Stadium. Has anyone given you a stick about that since you got the job?
No, I don't think many people know about that.
They do now.
It's a past life not many people know about here.
In terms of, I suppose, from this point of view, we're here about women's football on the show, and I suppose, first of all, congratulations on the appointment. It's great to see you back in football in a managerial position as opposed to a support role that you've been coaching in other clubs since leaving UCD. But also, it's great to see Shamrock Rovers back. The gravitas that the name brings to every competition they enter is huge, and I think from the rumour mill at least, things seem to be very, very different from maybe the first time around, and Rovers seem to be really coming to the table fully organised. Obviously, the recruitment of Jason Carey, now your appointment, really spells out that Rovers mean business when they come to the table this time around.
They do, I suppose. When I met Shane, it's a good couple of weeks back now. It was more when we got into the expectations for the year, and when you're taking a job at Shamrock Rovers, the expectations speak for themselves. It's you must win the league, and that's once I knew that was the expectations, and I knew then they're serious about it. It's not a box ticking exercise. All conversations, everything has been very professional, done better than any club I've really been at. So I really know that they really mean business this time around.
In terms of, I suppose, what that's going to look like on the ground, on the pitch, in the dugout with you, do you have a team assembled yet, or is that still a work in progress?
Still a work in progress, I suppose, when you're trying to put a brand new team together, and most of the top players around the league are already playing with existing teams, so you can't say too much about what potential targets are, but some conversations are probably ongoing, but it's a work in progress.
And would it be fair to say that that is an intention of Rovers to come in and recruit from within the league rather than, I know previously they kind of took what was a very young, promising group of players, but probably too inexperienced for the league back in the early days. Have you come in with that attitude of we're actually going to look around the league and try and recruit a girl here and another player there?
I think it's going to be a mixture of both. There's some very, very good players there. You have Abby Tuchel, you have Jamie Thompson, you have Maria Reynolds. So there's some really, really good players there already. So there's probably be a mixture of both.
Yeah. What's the commitment like? Obviously, Tallaght Stadium is fabulous. The new North Stand is coming on stream as well, hopefully in the next maybe 12 months or so. I'm not quite sure the timeline on that, but it's a very attractive proposition to play for Shamrock Rovers, arguably the most storied club in the country, and to come in and play in that stadium for a coach with the track record and pedigree that you bring to the position. Have you found the early discussions you've had with players potentially to be positive, or has it been a challenge to maybe get to sit down with these girls and talk to them?
No, a lot of it has been positive, and I suppose it is the name Shamrock Rovers, but it's more than just a name. It is a proper run club, and it's one of the, it is people who say, and it goes with the title of it. It is the biggest club in the country, but it's classified as the biggest and the best club in the country for a reason. It's how they do their business is the main reason behind it. Even when I was with UCD, and we had Liam Scales, Gary O'Neill, Fruga, whatever it was, the other clubs around the league would just make contact with them straight away. Didn't care whether they're on the contract, not on the contract, would try to tap them up, try to get them to persuade them, go to other clubs around the league. Shamrock Rovers was the only one that actually came in the front door and sought permission. Is it okay if we go and talk to so-and-so? They do their business right. Very professional in how they act, both on the field and off the field. And it's, I think when you do your business like that, I think it's a big attraction for both staff and players around Ireland.
Yeah. In terms of, I suppose, your own experience of the women's game, obviously you're hugely experienced in the men's game over the last 20 years or so, but in terms of your knowledge of the women's game, in terms of, obviously you mentioned some of the youngsters in Shamrock Rovers who've, I suppose, been in Ireland squads and been impressive with their under 19s, and you obviously done your research within the club, but in terms of the wider league, how familiar are you with it? Have you taken in a few games? Because I'll be honest, I heard your name mentioned. It was a lot earlier than last week in terms of this role, so it's been in the offing for a while, I'm led to believe. Have you been at games? Who has impressed you? Can you even tell us that kind of information?
No, I'm not going to tell you that information, because if I tell you who's impressed me, it means they're on my list. No, I think after I obviously met Jason and I met Shane a good while back, what I said was I wanted to go off and do my homework and take in as many games as I have, just to get an understanding all about the league, all about the players, who's good, who's not so good, different styles of play, patterns, how it all worked out. And yeah, I've done nothing but a lot of homework over the last couple of months, and that has set out now. It has set out my targets. It has given me a good, clear picture in my head of what is achievable and how it is achieved, or how I can achieve it. So yeah, I'm much more knowledgeable now, let's just say, than about 3 months ago.
So that's how long it's been in the offing. Thanks for confirming that. In terms of the facilities and everything, that's obviously Tallaght Stadium is where the girls will play, but will they be in Roadstone? Will they be part of the wider Shamrock Rovers family?
Yeah, everything is going to be equal to the men. It's going to be set up the exact same. It'll be Roadstone. There'll be no differentiation between the men and the women. It'll be playing in Tallaght. Everything will be. It's Shamrock Rovers. It's the standards. If it's a standard for the men, it's a standard for the women. Why should it be any other way?
I presume that applies to wages as well, does it?
Well, I suppose as it's to start off in it, Okay. I'll leave that to Jason to come out and say.
But in terms of, I suppose, the resources, the rumor mill is huge, and everything from being completely amateur to maybe looking after girls well in terms of their expenses and their costs and stuff like that to play for Shamrock Rovers. The rumor mill's in hyperdrive. And like we hear these stories, whatever club is coming in or is new or is doing well, we hear these stories coming out of clubs. What can you tell us about the kind of resources that are at your disposal to attract players to the club?
I probably can't say too much because it's probably not my place to actually go talk about that. I suppose my main thing is to try and attract a lot of the players and try give them a little bit of a picture of which way I want to play, what the project entails, and what we hope to achieve. But as on the financial end of it, I'll leave that to other people. I always try and stay out of the financial end of things.
I did have to ask. Did you watch the game last night?
I did indeed. Of course I did.
What's your thoughts?
It's just fantastic. It's more, I'm delighted for the girls that are obviously currently there, but I'm also delighted for the ones that have set the stage up a couple of years ago when they went and said, no, stop, enough is enough, we need better. And it's them that have set up this stage for these girls now to go and be successful. It's brilliant. It's raised the platform for everything that the way it should be.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. In terms of the impact that Shamrock Rovers coming into the league is going to have, obviously, geography comes into play as well. You're not a million miles from Peamount. You're maybe a little bit further from DLR. What's the impact of putting another National League side into that small geographic region? Will it dilute the pool a little bit for maybe youngsters coming up in terms of options, or is it just a case of maybe widening the net that we can get more girls into a sport that's really going to blow up in the next 12 months?
Yeah, well, I suppose one of the bigger advantages that Shamrock Rovers will have is obviously they've embedded so well into the Tallaght community, and probably in that area there isn't really that much there at the moment. So it gives an extra focal point now for all the 17s and the 19s that there is a senior team there now that you can go play out of Tallaght where the national team is being playing out of, and it's something to aspire to. So it's I suppose when the men originally moved out there many years ago, there was to try and embed into the community, and it's now that it's done on the men, it's time for it to be equaled out onto the women's side as well.
Absolutely. One thing we've spoken about a good bit on the show this year and last is the drain of talent to other leagues, whether it's to the continent or more recently to the WSL and WSL2 in England. Will Shamrock Rovers be at a level that it might attract maybe girls to come back, but more realistically, girls to stay here and to build something for themselves? Is that something that might be an option for girls who are maybe 50,
I hope so.
60?
I do think there's a lot of it. Well, one thing that probably needs to be sorted out is obviously the contracts that the girls are put on here. It is time for proper contracts, maybe better conditions for the girls here. But also, I think when people start moving and going away to England, there is the probably the classification that goes with it, that you're being a full-time footballer and you're abroad in England, and it's what you aspire to. But I don't think the wages of what they're being paid when you go away matches what you really, really should be on. So I think it's time that the league here raise their standard on both the money that they offer and the contracts that they offer. And I think if that's the direction that the league goes, I do think that you probably have more and more people staying here.
Yeah, I think you're right, because we hear the numbers on the men's side of the game where lads sign for championship teams, League One teams, they're on multiple £1,000 a week. That's not the case with the girls. They'd be lucky if they're getting maybe 2,000 quid a month, if they're really lucky. Some of them not even in that ballpark. And they're living in digs, or they're living in really tight constraints just to survive as a professional footballer. So I think it would be great to see the clubs, but I can hear already in my text messages later on the likes of Galway, who were on the radio just a couple of weeks back, saying they can't afford to run the current setup Like, is the money there? What do you see? I know this isn't your maybe area of expertise in terms of what can be done, but you've been around the game for so long. Is there a way to generate that kind of interest, that money from within the league? As someone who's just come into it recently in the last few months from outside the women's game, can you see that momentum building? Can you see that growth?
I can now. I suppose what was achieved last night is going to, light that torch to keep going forward with that. I think there'll be an awful lot more investment coming, and there'll be more sponsorship deals, and there'll be more focus put onto the women's game here, particularly now for the next 12 months. So now you have the stage that hopefully the FEI can go and back it and say, we have a platform here. Let's go now and sell it, deliver on it, grow it, but have an actual full framework of what's achievable for next year, the year after, and keep on growing it until you actually get into a full-time model here.
Yeah, absolutely. On a personal note, Collie, though, as I said, it's great to see you back in football. How difficult of a decision was it when, because a lot of people they see the men's games and women's game as separate entities, and never the two shall meet, and you've been so ensconced in the men's game for so long. How difficult was that decision when you were approached, or when that initial contact happened?
I did think about it, because the reason I had to think about it for a while was because I did have two other offers to get back into the men's, and believe it or not, I think my wife made sure that was Shamrock Rovers was the one that I should go for, and then I had a conversation with Dermot Keeley, and I explained the three offers that I had, and Dermot more or less said, if you don't pick Shamrock Rovers, I'm going to fly back there and I'm going to kick the living crap out of you. So it kind of put a home, and I was thinking Dermot will go, women's football, what are you doing? Because of how he is, his personality. But it was more, he said it's the only club in the whole country really that is run properly. It's a real proper club, and any opportunity, whether it's a chance to get in to manage the U9s and Shamrock Rovers, or is the women's senior team, he said it's a fantastic opportunity. Grab it with both hands and go with it.
So Dermot Keeley still calling the shots 15, 20 years later. It's funny the influence the man has. Well, Collie, listen, thank you so much for joining us. Great to catch up with you. As we said, it's been almost 2 decades, which is kind of hard to believe as well. But the very, very best of luck to you next year in Tallaght Stadium. Hopefully the license, I can't see any reason, as you mentioned, Rover's well run. I can't see any reason why they wouldn't be given a license. And it's going to be interesting times ahead for not just for Shamrock Rovers fans, but I think for the whole league in terms of getting to play in Tallaght Stadium. Normally you have to qualify for the cup final to do that in the Women's League. Yeah. Now they're going to get to play there once or twice next year by right, just by virtue of the fact that Rovers are in the league. So it's all very, very exciting for everybody associated with the women's game, and a very, very welcome piece of news over the last few weeks. So Collie, thanks so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you.
All right, take care.
Collie O'Neill there. Really, really exciting times for Shamrock Rovers, and I can't wait to see how they cope coming into the league next year. I think we'll see how it goes. It's going to be a different landscape in the Women's National League next year for a load of reasons. Shamrock Rovers' arrival, probably one of the main reasons behind that as well. Anyway, let's get on with the rest of the show. Myself and Aaron also earlier caught up with last week's the fixtures and the results in the Women's National League. Here's what we chatted about earlier on in the show. Collie O'Neill there. Exciting times for everybody at Shamrock Rovers. I think for the league in general, plenty of food for thought over the next few months as we prepare for what promises to be a very exciting 2023 for women's football in Ireland. One of the big pieces of news that caught my attention, Aaron, over the last couple of days was from Cork, and big news there in the shape of securing a deal with the Munster FA that Turner's Cross is going to be the home for not just Cork City in the League of Ireland, but Cork City in the Women's National League as well for the next 2 decades. That's a big, big statement of intent from Cork in terms of their plans for women's football within the club.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we spoke to Danny, and I spoke to Danny after the Shells game last week, and even talking to him when I turned the camera off, you could see he was even talking about the whole divides in Cork and stuff like that, and how he's trying to bridge that gap with the things like the players wearing their previous club's jerseys and stuff like that for the warm-ups and inviting them all there. So they're trying to build a lot of bridges. They're trying to get their ducks in order, because realistically, the biggest thing for a national league is we need a strong Cork. It's such a massive region with the amount of players that they've come over. You just look at the Ireland squad for the last couple of years. Like, you've had the likes of Claire Shine, Denise O'Sullivan, Megan Connolly, Amanda Budden was in there at one stage. There's been plenty of players from Cork who've been there, so it's just a case of we need to continue to see more of that. But it's great news.
Absolutely, but of course we've talked about the women's national league, women's national team, should I say, at length on today's show. But there is the small matter of the run into the women's national league title. We seem to have nearly forgotten about that. But of course, for the next 3 or 4 weeks, that is going to be all that anyone can chat about within the women's game in the country. 4 teams in the chase. Let's bring up the league table there. Have a quick look. Wexford, Shells, Peamount, and Athlone, all in the chase for league title. I made a bold prediction on last week's show that if Athlone could beat Wexford, they were my favourites for the title. I think I'm going to kind of stick to that. It's a big ask, but I think with the run-in that they've got, and if the other teams take points off each other, I think we could be looking at the most amazing run, almost up there with Leicester winning the Premier League not that long ago. What's your thoughts on that? If the truck has passed you at this point?
You can see how much this is on the fly this morning, folks. Unfortunately, you just trying to get stuff done because we're late flights. I think you're right, Breifne, and it's. I don't think it's a bold prediction as you say, because the three winnable games, and I suspect that the others will drop points somewhere. Like, you look at not this week, next week you've got Shells, you've got Peamount Wexford, and then you've got Shells Wexford on the last day of the season. So there's no doubt that Athlone, if they can win the 3 games, they could be well and truly in it. You'd have to be concerned from a Shelbourne point of view this weekend that they've got DLR Waves there, because if they're not on song this week, they could drop points, and then if they drop any points this week or next week, then we will see teams coming out of the title race. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that nobody can afford to drop any points at the moment.
Some exciting run-ins, as you mentioned, those 2 games for Wexford against both Peas and Shells. And teams have to drop points. Both teams can't win those games. So they're probably the games that matter the most, at least looking in from the outside. But it could be like that you mentioned. It was Galway who upset the apple cart last year. They had the biggest influence in the final days. DLR also. Could we see DLR upset Shells at the weekend? It is out of context. They're playing at home farm because of unavailability of the bowl. Of course, it's back into the AIL rugby season, and that's affected getting access to the bowl at the moment. Is that going to upset DLR more than it's going to upset Shells? It's on Shells' backyard.
Like DLR started doing a bit of searching for this venue. I think the main criteria they were trying to secure is something that the game can be actually streamed through LOI TV. So with home farm streaming a lot of their games, I think that's why they went there. I know they tried a couple of other venues and were unsuccessful, but from a DLR point of view, I don't think it makes a massive difference. Yeah, you'd like to be playing in the bowl. They've beaten Shelbourne once this season already when Katie Malone lobbed them on the button, and then you look at the response to Shells having they played in Tallaght Park a couple of weeks later, or Abby Larkin come on at half time and they absolutely blitzed them. So they are capable, DLR Waves, of getting something out of the game, but they just need to be completely on song. If DLR are even 5% off what they can be, they won't get anything out of the game, whereas Shelbourne can afford to probably play a little bit down and still grind out a result. But Shell's been ropey in recent weeks, and I think the wins against Bows and Cork probably helped them. But I can still see them dropping points somewhere. It's just a matter of where will they drop them. And if it's this weekend, title hopes will be over. But I don't know. I think it's too tight of a game to call this weekend.
The other 3 teams in the hunt play the bottom 3 sides in the league. Sligo, they faced a long journey down to Wexford. They've beaten them once this year as well. Can Lightning strike twice? And Cork, they play Peamount United down in Turner's Cross. You can't really see anything but a Peamount win in that, although Cork have been getting more competitive in recent weeks.
Yeah, they have been getting more competitive, but I think Peamount have been on great form as well, and I think the bit has dropped in between the teeth of Peamount lately, and you can see that. I think some of the team talks you look at James O'Fallon early in the season, he was frustrated that they weren't doing things. Where now they're doing them sort of things and they're scoring goals. And I think for them, it's a case of they'll pick up the 3 points. I think Cork will make it difficult. They may win probably 2-0, but it won't be smooth sailing with Pino, but they will get the result. And I think from a Sligo point of view, going to Wexford, although the game is on TG Carr, I still think that Wexford will come away victors, and they'll set themselves up nicely for the weeks ahead.
Of course, old stomping ground for Sligo captain Emma Ansbury as well. So I don't know whether she'll play at the weekend. She has been in and out of the side through injury all year. So, but she knows the place fairly well down there. So maybe that might be an asset to them. Final game, then, really, in terms of, well, we touched on Athlone Treaty, but I think given form, again, we probably have to go with Athlone on that one. But the final game of the weekend then sees Galway take the journey to Dalymount. Mid-table game, much more than pride at stake here.
There's a league place at stake as well, because if Galway lose this, then Bows are close. I think they'll go level with them, or they go a point behind. So there's league places still at stake, and I think from speaking to Julianne last week, I think they realised they have a bit of a point to prove in Galway after the slump, and there's a lot of impressive. They want to impress people for what's to come next season, and it is, it's a bit of a mid-table game, but I think both sides will want to win it, and it'll probably end up a 0-0 draw now, mustn't it?
Absolutely. Well, listen, that is it for us this week. We've run out of time. Thank you so much to Diarmuid Kearney, who joined us to talk about himself and Aaron's little nice date in Hampden Park last night, and to Collie O'Neill of Shamrock Rovers, an exciting new addition, both in a personal context, but also in the club context, for the next season of the Women's National League. We're already looking forward to 2023, a World Cup and Rovers in the league. It's going to be exciting. What will the league look like? We don't quite know yet. Who will be the defending champions? That is really the big question we want answered over the next 3 weeks. Plenty of road to go before we find out who that is, Aaron. Aaron, safe home from Glasgow. Hope you get home all right. And we will be chatting to you again next week.
Thank you.